All right, Jillian, great to see you again.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
Thank you for taking the time to meet and share your story. Jillian, you have an impressive resume. You're a record holding swimmer. Last summer, you swam across Lake Ontario.
I
You
did.
are a liver transplant recipient and also the founder of the Move for Life Foundation, committed to reducing the waiting time for transplants.
That is correct.
So, on the outside looking in, people see a woman with remarkable drive and determination. Would you say you were always this way?
I would say I was always pretty determined, even as a kid. I can recall being hard on myself as a kid when I swam as an age group kid. If I didn't do well, I wanted to redo it. I wanted to do it over and have another chance. So I think that's something that's been ingrained in me from a young age, and I wouldn't say my parents put it on me. It was something that I put on myself.
Last time we spoke, you mentioned you were a hairstylist. So,
Yes.
with all the time you're dedicating towards training, fundraising, and obviously, have you had to put down the scissors for the time being?
No, I haven't. I haven't ever stopped working throughout my training. I will say though, when I started training for Lake Ontario, we had numerous shutdowns in our province, as some of you probably know. And a lot of it coincided with the intense training that I had to do to train for Lake Ontario. So, in a funny way, I was out of work, not able to work as a hairstylist during the peak training months. So, in hindsight, it worked out in my favor, but I try to have a balance. I want to keep my clientele happy, but I've managed to balance my career and training and the foundation work. I've managed to balance it all at once. Sometimes it gets a little bit crazy, but I have a very grounding husband who helps keep me focused on what's most important.
So, when did your whole journey with swimming begin?
I began swimming at a very young age. I started swimming, I think, when I was 3 years old. I started lessons or whatever the mom and taught uh, lessons were, and I was apparently drawn to the water then. And I swam until I did the swimming lessons, and then I joined a swim team in my small hometown of Dorchester, Ontario. And I swam until I was about, I think I was 15 years old when I stopped swimming. And I actually stopped swimming on a team in organized swimming until I was 29 years old, which would have been right after I had my liver transplant. So, swimming growing up was a big part of my life. It was something that I always loved doing. What brought me back to swimming at 29 was learning about this sporting competition for transplant athletes. It's called the World Transplant Games. And I saw that the sport of swimming was offered as something that I could compete in at the games. And I thought, I want to get my mental health back and I want to get strong again after my transplant. And I thought that swimming was going to be a really great way to do that. And so literally 2 months after my transplant, I got back in the water and I began swimming and training for my first World Transplant Games competition that took place in 2017 in Malaga in Spain.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Um, Tell me about the transplant.
Yeah, so the transplant journey, it goes way back to when I was about 15 years old, which in all honesty was one of the reasons why I stopped swimming. My mom was really sick at that time. I was 15, that age where you're just kind of starting high school and you're making new friends. And I think that became the most important thing at the time. And my mom got really sick We have this disease in our family called hereditary hemorrhagic telangiectasia. And this is a blood vessel malformation disorder that can cause abnormal veins and arteries to form in different organs of your body, like your liver, your lungs, your brain. And it affected my mom, and she ended up having a transplant in 2004, saved her life. And so it was at that time when I was diagnosed, and the rest of my family went for the testing to see if we also carried the gene. And so I was diagnosed at the time with HHT, we call it for short. And and it was only seven short years later when I started experiencing pain in my abdomen from this disease, and I had began training for half marathons at the time, and I didn't realize that it was this. Um, I'm sorry, my dog is whining at the door. I didn't realize at the time that it was something else going on. It wasn't the training that I was doing that caused this pain. Um, and I mean, I could go into so many details about my transplant journey, but the illness and the sickness began when I was 22. I was in and out of the hospital uh, throughout my 20s until things got pretty bad when I was 27 years old, and they put me on some experimental medication that worked for a little while, and um, eventually I had to get off of this medication so that I could have a transplant. And I was fortunate to receive one just in time on March the 3rd of 2016.
So, given the nature of your foundation, was there any personal concerns that you would not find a viable organ in time?
Yeah, that was a big concern, especially in the last few months leading into my transplant, because there was at that point there was very little that they could do for me at that time anymore. Like they had explored all options, and really all I needed was a match, the perfect match of an organ, and that it's not a guarantee. And so we all patiently waited for that to happen. And like it's really an unfortunate situation that we have in our province, because there's very few people registered to become organ donors, and there are very many people that support organ donation. So there's a disconnect between I support it, but I'm not going to register my wishes. So that became my reality, waiting for a transplant. And there was a few days there where I wasn't sure if I was going to make it. I was having seizures at one point. I was at risk for having bleeding out, just to put it bluntly. There was some really serious moments there where I wasn't sure if an organ was going to come in time, but I was very fortunate. And another crazy part of the story is my mom became sick again, just around the same time that I did, and she was also waiting for a liver transplant at the same time. So just 2 weeks before I had my transplant, my mom had her second liver transplant, and so there was a worry for her as well that a liver wouldn't become available for her. She's got a very rare blood type, and we had seen this the first time she had her transplant, where it felt like the very last minute something became available. And so that's what I had seen. I had seen that struggle, and I thought, that could be my reality. So having seen my mom going through it, in a way, it helped me because I saw the success and saw that she made it through those hard times. But I saw the struggle that she went through to get there, and I realized, how close she was to dying, and that could have been my reality as well. So we're very fortunate to be alive today, and I do think about my organ donor every day, um, and his family who also consented to donating his organs, and yeah, I realize how lucky I am.
How was your recovery?
I would say now I would never know that I had a transplant. I feel better now than I ever have. Uh, Initially, the recovery was really hard. It was I had been sick throughout, the majority of my 20s, and I had become a victim of the illness, and I felt sad because I had missed out on a lot of things in my 20s. And overnight, I had my transplant, and then the very next day, it was like, okay, your life is on an upwards trajectory now, and you'd think that my mindset would switch immediately too, but it didn't happen overnight. It was like it took me probably a few weeks to process that my life had potential again, and even though it's what I had wished for months and years, it took me time to realize that, you're not the victim anymore. You're not sick now. You don't have an excuse to not do anything. I got to get back to work, and um, you know, I have I have a life to live, and a husband, and I have two dogs that need me to be there, and um, so I will say something switched in me. I can't remember the exact moment or anything, but I decided I didn't want to be sad about what had happened. I wanted to be happy that I'd had my transplant and got my life back. And that's, I think I attribute my training and my discipline and practice in the pool and swimming for a huge part of my recovery, because I set my mind to training for something, and I wanted to do well at it, and I wanted to compete, and it got me back in the pool and got me on a schedule. I wanted to swim every day so that I could get better and get stronger, healthier. And swimming helped me not only physically get stronger, but it helped me mentally push through barriers that um, were different than the barriers I faced being sick. It was, um, it was the challenges that I put on myself. Like, this is hard. This is a hard workout. It's hard to hold my breath. It's hard to swim, but I'm going to do it anyways, instead of pushing myself through being ill and just hang on one more day, that kind of thing. So, um, yeah, my recovery was probably a good year and a half before I felt like myself again. It was,
I can say from personal experience that I was determined to get up and go immediately after my surgery.
oh,
And
yeah.
I was often frustrated by what felt like the incredibly slow progress I was making and regaining control over my muscles and my ability to talk. Now,
Yeah.
given your drive and your determination, did you ever have similar experiences where you were finding yourself frustrated because you would hold yourself to high or unrealistic expectations immediately after surgery, like during the immediate recovery phase?
Um, I would say it came a little bit later. Uh, I think initially I hadn't competed at the level that I am now before my transplant. So in a way, I didn't really have like anything to compare myself to. I wasn't like, oh, you've been stronger, you've been better. But there was definitely moments where I felt weak, getting back into the pool, and I know that I had swam better than that before, and it wasn't even always about swimming, but it was one way that I could measure my progression. Um, I remember being anxious to get back to work. I felt like I don't need to take a year off, and that's what had been suggested. Take a year off after your transplant to fully recover. I went back after 6 months and realized that it was too soon, and I think that was me trying to speed up my recovery and pretend that everything was, that I was back to myself, but it might have been once I started back at work when I realized I'm not back to myself. I felt very awkward going back into the salon after I'd had my transplant. I didn't feel like I fit in. I had um, just been through this like crazy experience, and here I was back in a salon, people talking about how they want their hair to look, and it just didn't feel right. My mind wasn't there yet. Um, and so that was a bit frustrating, just feeling like I wasn't feeling like I was fitting in back the way that I was. So that was my experience, but I can totally see, as an adult and you're working and you just want things to be back to the way they were right away. You got to have patience with yourself.
So tell me about these World Transplant Games.
Yeah, so the World Transplant Games is has been um, really the fire that started my competitive training, and it's been an incredible experience. The people that I've met, uh, and the hope that it brings for me every 2 years, and motivation that it brings for me to go back. So the World Transplant Games is a sporting competition for people that have had an organ transplant, and they take place every 2 years in a different place. So I've been to Spain, and I competed in 2019 in Newcastle, England. And in 2021, they were supposed to be in Houston, but they were canceled because of the pandemic, of course. And they've been in Argentina. I think um, they've been in Canada. They were in Canada in 2005. So they've been all over the world. There's usually at least 1,000, if not sometimes 2 or 3,000 athletes that come and compete. There are, um, what's the right word? There are competitive athletes such as myself that go. I'll be honest, I want to win when I go. I'm competitive. But then there's people that want to go because they just want to celebrate life and compete and celebrate what they're able to do now. So there's room for all kinds of athletes at the transplant games, and it's the most friendly competition that I've ever been to. Everybody cheers everybody on. Um, Oftentimes, the person who comes in last gets the biggest applause. There's track and field, there's swimming, there's bowling, tennis, table tennis. Um, Sometimes there's different sports that are only really played in the country. I can't think of them right now, but there's like pickleball. I don't know if that would have been part of the Canadian Games, but sometimes there's national sports that they offer. There's darts. So there's sports in all levels, and people competing of all levels. But I gotta say the best part is meeting people and sharing stories with others that have had transplants. And not just for me as a recipient. My husband comes with me to the games as well. And I think the first games experience we had was so great for both of us to meet and hear other people's stories. And for my husband, I was 29 when I had my transplant, and you, you often think, transplants are for older people, and that's not true at all. But it's true that in our city, anybody that I know that's had a transplant, or most of the people that I know, are older. And so for Zach, my husband, I think it was really good for him to meet other people his age that were the supporter and that had been in the place that he had been and experienced having to essentially put his life on hold to help me and support me. And he was able to connect with people that had similar experiences that he had, and I think that was comforting for him and helped him feel like he belonged somewhere, and had someone to relate to and talk to. And I saw that at that in Spain, and I felt it for myself as well, just connecting with others who had stories like mine. I recall meeting this really sweet girl who had a double lung and heart transplant all at once. And hearing that story just, put things into perspective that it could always be worse. And as bad as I thought my transplant was, I'm not diminishing my story or anyone else's, but when I heard a story like hers, it was just, it makes you realize just one thing, what we're capable of overcoming, but also, there's people out there that have endured like awful, awful things. And to take, everything that we have, um, you know, like be grateful for what we do have and the experiences that we've had that we've come out of. So
Absolutely.
mm.
So you actually hold a few records, as do some of your colleagues, if I'm not mistaken, in your foundation.
Yeah, yeah. So at the 2019 games, well, I'll just say the 2017 games, my first games, I came away with 2 silver medals in the 200 freestyle and the 400 freestyle, which I was, extremely proud of. Cried tears on the podium because it was a vision I had of being healthy and standing on the podium and being able to compete at the games. And then I trained really hard for the next games in 2019, and I came away with 5 gold medals. I broke all the world records in my events in the pool, in the 50 fly, 200-meter individual medley, 200 free, 400 free, and the 100 free. And my friend who I met at the transplant games, his name is Gray Brett. He holds 5 world records as well in swimming, and I wish I could tell you what events they were in swimming. I don't recall, but he's a fantastic backstroke swimmer, front crawl. I believe it was the 200 IM as well, but he holds 5 world records as well in his age group. So the two of us and my other friend and part of the foundation as well, Benoit Raymond. He also is a fantastic swimmer. I don't believe he holds any world records right now, but the 3 of us swimmers and a few others that we've met at the transplant games, we look forward to seeing each other every year, and we're competitive, right? So we want to have a great time and meet people, but we also want to win. So it makes it really fun.
So it's a great segue into the foundation itself.
Yeah.
Tell me about the foundation.
Yeah. So the foundation was born when we learned that the transplant games in 2021 were going to be canceled. And we were all so disappointed. And I had started thinking about what could I do to continue swimming, but also continue raising awareness for the transplant games, or sorry, for organ transplant. Um, so at the time, I was reading a few books. I was reading a book by Diana Nyad. Oh my goodness, Find a Way, I think it's called, and another book written by Ross Edgley. And this man swam around the island of Great Britain. And these incredible feats inspired me, and it made me want to swim across a lake. And I literally sent a message to Gray, and I said, "You got to read this book. You got to read these books. I'm so inspired. I want to swim across a lake." And he's like, "Oh, wouldn't that be awesome if the first transplant recipient ever swam across the Great Lake?" And that's how the idea was born. So we started talking about the swim and how we would raise awareness and fundraise. And then we thought, you know what? This is something that we want to do, is continue to raise awareness for organ donation. Why don't we create a foundation? And so we started brainstorming who who else can be part of this? Who would want to be part of this? And so we have a really fantastic small group of us, myself, Benoit, who I mentioned, the other swimmer, Tony. He's extremely busy. He helps out when he can. He's not necessarily a board member, but he contributes. Gray and myself and Benoit's mom, who actually donated a kidney to Benoit, and a few others, Brad, whose grandfather had a heart transplant and gave him an extra 26 years of life. So we all support the cause. We've all been touched by organ donation in some way, and we were all just very excited um, to get the swim organized and start raising funds um, for organ donation. And the thing that I really wanted to do initially was give back to the transplant program, the place where I received my transplant, where my mom received her transplant. And so we decided to raise money for the University Hospital here in London, Ontario, and donate it to um, this specific fund, which I can go into if you'd like. Um, and yeah, we just really wanted to give back. And so we decided our mission at Move for Life is to reduce the wait times for organ transplant, because we all know very well that the wait for a transplant can be fatal and is extremely, that's one of the hardest parts of waiting for an organ transplant.
So you're actually working through your foundation with some of the medical team at London Health Sciences Center.
Yes.
How did the opportunity come about to work so closely with them?
I called them. I I I I called the transplant unit and I told them what I wanted to do. And I said, I want to swim across Lake Ontario and I want to raise money um, for your program, for your transplant program. But I told them, like, I want the money that we raise to go to a place that is going to have the biggest impact on the transplant program. I don't want it to go to, administration, or um, I don't want it sitting in a bank account somewhere. I want this money to have, the biggest impact and help the most people. And so I needed guidance. I needed somebody that worked right in the transplant program to talk to about that. And so Dr. Mayor Bromania got on the phone with me and we talked about, okay, what's your goal amount? How much money do you think you can raise? Do you want to raise? And then he began telling me about this program. It's called ARP, Abdominal Regional Perfusion, which is the newest approach in organ preservation. Right now, most hospitals across the country, or actually all hospitals across the country, to preserve an organ, they put it on ice. And what ARP does is it preserves the organ by, I'm not going to be the best at explaining this in a technical way. This machine hooks up to the organ that's going to be harvested, and it reoxygenates the organ, keeping it warm and keeping the blood flowing through it so that it keeps the quality of the organ intact. And it also improves the quality of organs that would otherwise not be viable for transplant. So it increases the pool of organs for transplant, which means more transplants can be performed. So it's reducing wasted organs and it's improving the quality of organs that might have complications post transplant. And I said, that's what I want to do. I want to invest our funds in something that is going to be useful moving forward. I don't want to invest my money in an ice box, for example. I want to have the best impact I can and make the biggest difference possible with what we're doing. So um, after my swim, it was successful. We raised $150,000 from the swim and donated it to the transplant program, which was like mind blowing. I could not have done it alone. I don't take full credit for doing that. I swam the lake, but it took a whole team to be able to do it. Um, and our momentum moving forward is strong. We have, as I said, a really great team of people that want to make a difference. And so we're planning another event this year. Our goal was to raise 250 is to raise $250,000. And since the swim, we've raised a little bit more. But we want to continue raising money to fully support the initiative and um, and the startup costs for this program, the ARP program at the hospital. So we're planning another event and fundraising right now for it. So
Do you want to tell me a little bit about that future
about
event?
yeah, yeah. So as I mentioned, the mission of our foundation is to reduce wait times, and so for transplant. So we decided we need to shine a light on the length of the wait list for a transplant. And currently in our province of Ontario, there's 1,600 people waiting for a life-saving transplant right now. And so we decided, let's cover 1 kilometer for every person on the wait list. So we're doing a 1,600 kilometer relay around the province of Ontario. And we decided to break this relay up into 10 segments. So each segment is approximately 160 kilometers, and each segment is led by a different team captain. And the team captains are essentially our team with a few others. And they make up their team as they wish. So their friends and family, whoever they wish to be on their team, and they're dividing up their 160 kilometers however they wish. But the whole point is to travel together as a team, passing this baton that represents the shared effort and energy being passed from one person to another, like a transplant, to get us around the province. And we want to make noise in every city that we're going to. We're going to promote that we're passing through. We want to collect, as many funds as we can so that we can donate it to our cause. And most teams are cycling. We got a lot of cyclists covering the distance, but we have runners, and we're actually passing through some lakes as well. So we're doing some swimming, some paddling. One of my friends on my team is going to be rollerblading over 50 kilometers. So there's going to be lots of people involved in this relay. Hopefully that will make a lot of noise and the word will spread really far across our province of what we're doing. And we think it'll take 6 days. We're starting on August the 1st from the University Hospital where we're going to donate the funds. And we're finishing there on August the 6th. And we're traveling day and night. So there's a few teams that start during the night, and we tried to keep it fairly even. So probably half of the teams will start in the daytime, but finish at night, and then the other half will start at night and finish in the daytime. So um, it's a pretty big event. It's been a lot of fun to plan. It's been um, a lot of new things for me learning how to plan an event like this. But I'm really looking forward to it. Like this is going to be a really, really fun week of meeting people and hearing their stories and why they are wanting to be part of the relay. Um, and just what it represents, I think, is it's very important to me. And I think I've heard from most people that are part of the relay that it's touching for them, because every kilometer they cover, they know that it represents somebody that's waiting for a transplant. So
That's amazing.
thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so you've accomplished a lot of great things. If you had to isolate one thing, say it's the thing you're most proud of, would you be able to list that?
Oh, yeah. I think I think overcoming my transplant and and getting to where I am today, that's the overall arching thing for me. Because I know that I could have, you know, recovered from my transplant and just carried on life as if it didn't happen. But I wanted to make a difference, and I followed that urge that I had to give back. And it's not been easy. It's been a lot of learning curves. It's been hard. It's been out of my comfort zone. It's been extremely fun. It's been putting myself out there, meeting a lot of people. Um, and so I'm proud of that. I'm proud that I feel like I have become a leader in some way, and I know that I've inspired people because they tell me and they message me and they tell me to my face, and I'm really proud of that. Um, I can't deny that when I touched the wall in Marilyn Bell Park after swimming for 18 and a half hours, that that wasn't a highlight of my life, because it was. That represented a lot for me as well. It also represented what I just explained, like overcoming all of, maybe what people thought wasn't possible, and then to actually do that and follow through with training for a 52-kilometer swim in a pandemic after having a liver transplant 6 years ago was it was just really it was it had an impact on me. It was a highlight for sure.
What would you say to those considering becoming donors themselves?
uh I would say, don't think about it too much and just go for it. What do you really have to lose after you've passed away? uh I can tell you, doctors aren't wanting to take your organs before you die, 'cause so they can donate them. It doesn't work like that. I've heard that as a reason why people don't wanna donate. There's nothing to be scared of after you've passed away. If you register your consent to be an organ donor, you could become a hero just like that, and you save a life like mine, like my mom's, like the people that I've met at the transplant games. Um, and you can improve the life of up to 75 people when you register your wishes to be an organ donor and save up to 8 lives. And to me, it's a no-brainer. I'm biased, of course, but what did you have planned to do with your organs after you died anyways? So that's what I have to say to those who are considering. Um, Also, just it takes 2 minutes. So if you're like, "Oh, yeah, I'm gonna do that tomorrow," like, how many minutes do you spend on your phone?
Yep.
Do it right now. And I don't wanna sound like, uh, terrible or anything like that, but we just never know, you never know when you might pass away. And I never wish an early death on anyone, but accidents happen, and oftentimes the transplants that are used for the organs that are used for transplant are from motorcycle accidents and kind of freakish things like that. Like, it's never a planned death, really. And a lot of the organs that are used are also from younger people. So, not to sound too scary or morbid, but I think just registering your wishes when you're thinking about it, like today, right now, when you're listening, just be a donor.ca. It takes 2 minutes.
Perfect. Amazing. Geez, I guess that's. Thank you for joining, Jillian, sharing your story. Um,
Sure.
you are why I do this. As you just said, you are an inspiration for others, myself included. You've made some incredible work with your foundation, um, reducing the waiting times for organ transplants. It's a beautiful endeavor.
Mhm.
Um, and August 1st, you're going to be taking the next step on your journey for this year, which will be that 1,600-kilometer relay across Ontario. So I
Yeah.
wish you all the best.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you. All right. Take care.
Yep, you as well.